Calling Committee on Finance, regular meeting to order. Councilwoman Joanne Ryan is Tuesday, November 2nd. Madam Clerk, would you please read the roll?
Chairwoman Ryan.
Present.
Vice Chairman Castillo.
Present.
Councilman Narducci.
Here.
Councilwoman Anthony.
Present.
Councilman Taylor.
Here.
We have 5 present.
Wonderful. Let the record reflect, we are also joined this evening by our councilors Vargas, Oscar Vargas, and Mary Kay Harris, as well as Mike Correa. Michael Correa.
So noted.
Our solicitor this evening is Kevin McHugh. Thank you very much, solicitor, for joining us.
Welcome, Councilwoman.
I don't see anyone on Zoom, any council people on Zoom?
And anybody that has to come over.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you kindly read the first item into the record?
Communication from Deborah L. Ray, Chair, Providence External Review Authority, dated October 13th, 2021, according to the City Council of the Board's recommendation of Frank Parole to the position of Executive Director of the Providence External Review Authority for a term of 2 years, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Okay. In our packages today, we have a letter Council President Iglesias from the External Review Authority. Do we need, no, it's already attached to the document, right? It's recommending Mr. Kelroy, how do you say that, Kelroy? Paroli, I'm sorry, to the position of Executive Director. That letter is attached to a resume for the gentleman. So is Mr. Paroli present? Please come up.
I am.
Wonderful. Do we have members of the review board, Para, with us as well? Anybody who participated in this hiring process, I'd like you to step up to the table. And I think it would be prudent if we swear everyone in at the start preceding your testimony, if that's okay.
Please all raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please each state your name for the record, please.
Clarence Coley.
Susan Ureta? Deborah Ray, President. Thank you. Wonderful. Please take a seat. Join us at the table. Okay, folks. So, Mr. Crowley, I think we're going to start with you.
Certainly.
You've been nominated, I understand, by Para. We're going to ask the Para committee to speak after you. But first, I'd like to welcome you to the Finance Committee. Thank you. Thank you for applying for this very important role. It's important to the council and the city of Providence. We want to make sure we get the absolute best person for this position. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about yourself. And if you wouldn't mind, if you could just drop your mask a bit.
If you don't mind, I don't mind.
That's okay. Unless the folks at the end of the table have an issue, we're okay. Please talk about yourself. Tell us about your background. The members of the committee have the benefit of your resume, as well as it was posted with the committee agenda. So it is a public document at this point. So please tell us who you are, what you've accomplished. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you hope to accomplish in this role.
Sure, my pleasure. Nothing more than I love than talking about myself.
Yeah,
I
good.
feel like everyone here, right? Everyone loves talking about themselves. My background, it's a joke, no one does. The background is prior to, so after college, I was in the military, and after military service, I joined the police force. I was a Middletown police officer for 15 years. I pretty much did everything in the police department up to when I retired as a deputy chief. While I was in the police department, I went to law school at Suffolk University Law School at the evening program. I graduated law school. I stayed with the police department for about 5 years after graduation. While I was there, I was also doing some legislative work for policing, for the Police Chiefs Association. I worked on the mental health bill and some other minor legislation. It got me thinking about practicing law more seriously, and I transitioned from police work and I left policing to become an attorney. I'm now a defense attorney. Primarily, my primary practice is criminal defense work with the law firm of Venture Crime. But I stayed involved with policing. I'm an adjunct professor at Roger Williams Justice Studies to involve doing training for police officers, continuing education, primarily in bias-based policing and professional standards, which is very related to this position. When I saw this position posted, it really intrigued and interested me because it was so, it's almost as if it was tailor-made for my background and my interests. I have a legal background, I have a policing background, and I'm very passionate always have been about bias-based policing, fair policing, and ensuring that professional standards and high-quality standards are met in the policing industry. So this position is a fantastic opportunity for me to, I still care very much about policing and the community, and as you see, when I went into legal work, I went into criminal defense, right? Which a lot of people assume a police officer might jump into prosecution, but I always joke that it's a balancing of the scales. I spent a lot of years arresting people, and I thought maybe I could start helping people with dealing with the process of being arrested by police and having to face that uphill challenge. Well, policing is a fantastic, it's a wonderful profession where people give very much of themselves, but oftentimes there are issues that need to be properly addressed. And I've always been of the mindset that external review and oversight is a very long overdue in the profession in general. That it makes the profession better when outside sets of eyes can look in who are not personally vested or have any interest as far as working with the person that may be investigated, who's solely looking at the facts and where the facts take them, because that makes the organization and the profession more pure, so to speak, so that people are held accountable. Because the people that are holding the regular folks, citizens to account, should be held to equal, if not higher standard. And so I think that my outlook, my background, and my passion meets those criteria to bring someone to the table who can take para where it needs to go and make sure that the process is fair and impartial, but also thorough and accurate. So that's what I'm about, and that's my background.
Wonderful. What I'd like to do now, if it's okay with the committee, is invite the para president. Is it a chair or president? Chair? I'd like to invite you folks to identify your roles in para and talk about the process, and then we'll allow open questions for everyone. I think that would be the most efficient way. So how did Mr. Cowley get to the table tonight? Talk about why you're recommending him, talk about the process that you went through, and the decision of the committee. Was it unanimous? Please brief us on that, if you will.
Okay. Again, my name is Deborah L. Ray.
Yes.
I recently just had a stroke, so I'm coming back from that. At this particular point in time, my vice chairperson, Ms. Susan DeRita, can express and address all the questions
Wonderful.
that I asked.
Thank you very much.
You're
You
welcome.
didn't need to come tonight, but I very much appreciate you coming tonight.
No problem.
I know that you're deeply engaged in the work that you do, and I appreciate you coming in, and we wish you the very best
God bless.
with your health challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you feel like you need to leave at any time, do not hesitate.
I will. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all.
Wonderful.
Susan.
Susan DeRita.
Thank you. First of all, the posting for the executive director was initially issued in January of 2021. That was a posting that was developed with the Human Resource Department as well as with members of para. It had a salary range of $90,208 to $98,000.
I'm sorry, could you speak just a little slower, please?
Sure.
I can't write that fast.
So it
So
was,
the HR department helped you craft the job description,
yes,
and the salary was how much?
it was $90,208 to $98,213. I believe it was $823.
Okay,
The position, I'm sorry.
cool, please continue.
The position preferred an advanced degree over a bachelor's degree. The candidate would be responsible for staffing, managing, hiring, any type of consultant that we needed. You also had to adhere to the ordinance, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the lengthy ordinance that we have. Advise on legal issues, develop trainings for both the board and possibly for outside agencies about para. Develop trainings that also were pertinent to NACOL, which is the national organization that is kind of the premier agency on oversight. The person had to have a working relationship and familiarity with governmental and judicial structures, knowledge of practices and procedures relating to hearing and investigations, and there was a preference of being bilingual, just to name a few of the requirements. We did receive 19 responses to the initial posting. Of those 19, 4 were Providence residents. 4 people were interviewed, and out of those 4, 2 were Providence residents, but the hiring committee did not feel that any of those people were suitable for the position. So the posting was never taken down by the HR department, fortunately. So in September, we received 4 more resumes, of which Mr. Crowley was one of the applicants. And looking at his resume, it stood out, and he was the one that was interviewed out of the 4. As you've seen by his resume, he does have a very impressive background, and in military law enforcement, just so many various things that would be pertinent to an executive director of para. He's a self-proclaimed rule follower, as he's told us. He sets very high standards and accountability in anything he does and enjoys a challenge. I spoke to his former supervisor, who is retired Chief Anthony Basari, and he described him in one word, and that was brilliant. I thought that was very positive to hear. He brings a skill set of policy analysis and review, a working knowledge of police operations, community engagement, investigation and mediation, labor relations, and has been responsible for several police internal investigations while he was on the force in Middletown. He conducts trainings on reform and accountability, as he's indicated at Roger Williams. He will have a very significant challenge once he gets there, and this might scare him away because we haven't really discussed this. But since the inception of the authority in its current form, 78 complaints have been received, but only 43 have been brought to the authority for any kind of disposition or how to proceed. No paper files were left for the authority, and electronics, to put it mildly, are extremely unorganized. So while we have been trying to kind of recreate a filing system, the first thing that he's going to be hit with is actually trying to find out what complaints are out there that are still valid and people still interested in pursuing. He will also have to be responsible for finding some kind of a database where all of these reports can be entered, where we can start tracking data, see what's, parts of the city most of the complaints are coming from, and what the complaints are about. So that's going to be one of his top priorities. At our last meeting of para, there were 6 board members present, 2 were absent. They did listen to Mr. Caroli speak for at least an hour and a half, asked several questions, and it was a unanimous vote that we recommend Clarence Caroli to the council.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Committee members, let the record reflect that Councilwoman Miller has joined us. So thank you. Committee members, any questions? Councilwoman Anthony.
Thank you. Very, very impressive resume. I have to say, I think you're, at least it looks like that there's an excellent intersection of skills here that will hopefully make you a very successful executive director. I guess my question is, one, whether is this a full-time position?
Yes,
Okay, so you'll be leaving your current employment.
I will be associated with the law firm still, but I wouldn't take any conflict in cases that I have. There's a lot of hours in the day to do stuff that's off hours, so I wouldn't
Okay,
be
so-
leaving. I would remain in council.
Of council,
Yeah.
so you may do some cases that are
Right.
not conflict.
Right.
Okay. And then the other question I have is given the overwhelming organizational requirements, just to get Para up and running the way it should be, and I guess this is more a question for you, do you have an adequate budget, because I can't remember.
We have not looked at what the cost will be for an actual database, and that might be something that might be beyond what our current budgeted funds are.
Okay, other than the database, I mean, equipment, computers, things like that, is there a sufficient budget for that?
Looking at the budget, just kind of a cursory thought and, process of how much it's going to cost, probably not, because right now, our office is located in a very small, office located up on Broad Street. So we will have to move, and $2,500 a month was budgeted for rent. But to outfit that office with all the equipment that we need, probably not. We have a copier in there, that's a copier printer that is extremely slow. So if we're gonna be producing any type of, paraphernalia that we're gonna be sending out to the community to let them know about Para, the equipment that we have right now definitely won't be able to do that.
So I would imagine that should you take this job that would be your first priority, I would think, to come up with, since we'll be talking about the budget after the first of the year in the spring sometime, that you would be coming to us and talking about what your needs are to get this office running the way it
So I
should
think
be.
we're putting the cart before the horse. There is $202,000 in this existing budget that's not been spent down. And I do think that bringing on the executive director and assessing the situation and looking at the budget and coming back to this committee would be obviously the next step. So I think, thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Did you get your
I did, thank you very much.
committee members? Any committee members have any questions, thoughts, concerns?
So when you move into Providence?
Yeah, you renting a space?
I do.
The Fifth Ward is lovely.
That's the only thing I didn't like about your resume.
That's it?
But it was
Well,
not
that's
being-
good. I mean, that's
it's not
one
being a
thing.
resident.
We can work on it.
All right.
Okay, anyone else on Councilwoman Harris?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the committee. I know you guys work diligently and hard. And it's very, very important that when we do showcase the power, and power, that we are being able to keep up with those complaints you're talking about. You mentioned, as one of the board members, you mentioned that some of his priorities would be all those things listed. I did not hear you list that out of that 200 and something, that he also should be thinking about a staff person to assist him. Because I think the overload of all the things, and we went through that before, as we remember the last time, right? So we don't want to repeat history. So it means that let's make sure that you have proper staff, because Councilwoman, as she alluded to, there will be another budget time for you to start really getting all the stuff you need in order. However, it's very important that that structure becomes very real this time for us, because I think this is it. This is finally it. This will be the third strike for Para. And as far as I'm concerned, I think you guys are on a good way. Thank you. Come aboard. Welcome aboard. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of dynamics here in Providence, and I'm sure your board will be supporting, helping you understand that. But please get yourself proper staff. I'm not talking about an investigator right away, but please get you some kind of confidential secretary, somebody there to assist you, especially in some of the tracking that your board been trying to track down with the data that's missing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just interject this. The first step, right? I have to go through this process, and if I'm fortunate enough to get approved and I take the position, it's always been, and I mentioned this at my meeting with the board, is I have to assess the needs and the current ordinance and the way that it's drafted, and as far as the organizational structure of Para, that all has to be planned out. You have to have a plan before you ask for money, before you start worrying about money. You have to have a plan.
I like this guy already.
Yeah.
And-
But make sure you have staff to help you with
Right,
that,
and you
because
also
we
have to
learned in
assess the need
hindsight.
Before you just assume how many people, I don't wanna just throw something against the wall, I want this to work as much as you. I don't put my name on something and then just let it go. I put my name on something to make it right. And so that's my plan for us, is to assess this, have a good plan going forward with cooperation of the board and the council, so that we're all on the same page, and then implement that plan, so that we're not wasting money, we're not just throwing money at, bad money after bad money, that's not good. So I just want you to be aware of that.
May I, just because I
Please
am very
continue.
passionate about this, I actually was one of the beginners of the para, right? So I'm very passionate, I've been watching it for years, and it's very important that it works for the community. I'm just speaking from hindsight. Please don't travel alone trying to assess that office and put that office together, because we went through that already. And I know the community is waiting to see what's gonna happen with this next phase of para.
Sure.
And at this point, I think you have all the support. I think all the council people are very supportive of para, and has been all along. We just needed to really function really well, and the procrastination of this need is really way behind time. We're running way behind time compared to the things that have been happening in the city and continue to happen in the city. And the purpose of para is for people to have an alternative. It's not a substitute, it's an alternative. So we would want you to succeed. I just want you to be successful.
Yeah. Me too.
That's just my,
Me too. And I welcome the partnership. I'm not about doing it by myself without any input. So that's how things work when you have people working together.
So what we're here tonight for is to make sure that you're the right person for the job. And based on what I've heard so far, you have a tremendous resume, and you're clearly interested in the position and willing to work collaboratively to move para forward. So I think those are all wonderful things. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you'd like to do? I know that I've heard time and time again that there's a desire to maybe look at the ordinances. Have you looked at that?
I have.
And would you be prepared, not anything in detail, but just give a broad explanation of some of the things that you think can make to improve how para operates and can help the outcome by modifying maybe the ordinance. Any
So,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I do. So I'll keep it brief, but essentially the bylaws and the tracks was written in a way that just tracks the ordinance currently. And the ordinance, para is an advisory board, the way it's currently written. And there are probably some things that could be shored up in the ordinance to require certain participation and turnover of information from the police department, so that there isn't any wiggle room or ambiguity as to what we're entitled to as far as information is concerned. So that's something I would shore up in the ordinance, just to make sure that there is a requirement for compliance with, we wouldn't have to come to the council for subpoenas for every single thing, right? Now, I don't think that that's going to be a problem in the beginning or at any point. Based on my experience, I know the chief of police there. I have a background that I think will let me walk in the door with some credibility and trust off the bat, that I'm not there. It's not a gotcha moment. I'm not trying to get anyone. But we do need to have the idea of what para is and how it's going to function sorted, because it's kind of a hybrid model right now of an investigatory oversight body, which is one of the most expensive ways to do oversight, and it doesn't have the budget to meet that currently, the way it's structured, nor does it have the staff or the infrastructure. And so I'm going to do some more research based on our need. I need to know how many complaints we get yearly, what the average is, but I have already researched like-sized departments with oversight around the country, and the way that they do it, there's 3 models. There's an oversight, there's a moderator type, and there's an investigatory type, right? We're more situated to be more of an oversight, where you're doing review, can be concurrent with ongoing investigations, and also pulling prior and past investigations to to review them for thoroughness and accuracy, and to advise back to the police department and to this council and to the mayor's office as to whether there are irregularities or issues and what recommendations there are. But those are just some of the things that need to be shored on. What type of a oversight agency it's actually going to be? What model are we actually using, and are we funded properly and staffed properly for that model that works for the
Great.
organization?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We look forward to working with a successful candidate on those topics. Can I ask the auditor, what is the pay range for this position that was posted?
I have it in the ordinance as an 823 to an 824, 94,773 to 108,774.
94,773 to 108,774. And the requirements of the position as posted are what? Can the committee speak to that? What are the requirements, the educational requirements?
So the educational requirements were prefers an advanced degree over a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
I have the original posting. If you'd like to see it.
And the committee has already testified, the para committee or the para board has already testified that the decision to put forth Mr. Calroy was unanimous.
Yes.
In the decision. Okay, with that, any other questions at the table? Committee members, council members? Let the record reflect that Councilwoman Fortune, I see, is in the back of the room.
Very good, thank you.
With that, may I have a motion to recommend approval of the nomination? Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilwoman Anthony and Councilman Narducci. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it, the motion carried.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Well, you still have to go before the full council.
Well,
So I would-
gonna say,
Excuse me. You still have to go before the full council. I would recommend that you reach out to each council person, introduce yourself, talk about your background, talk about what your visions are, what your goals are. As you articulated, as well as Mr. Rita articulated, we want to work with you collaboratively. The council is invested in para. It's an important role in the city of Providence. And we want to give you the tools you need to succeed. So I don't think that you're going to be bashful, and I'm very impressed with your credentials, and we see nothing but success for you in that role. With that, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure to meet all.
Thank you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Good job, committee. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I'm going to, let's take, I'd like to entertain a motion to waive the reading of items 2, 3, and 4. May I have that motion? Motion made by, that's okay, motion made by Councilman Taylor, seconded by Vice Chair Castillo. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. So we've waived the readings of item 2, 3, and 4. What we have before us is the appropriations of the budget. That's item 2. Item 3 is the compensation, and item 4 is the classification. I've invited a number of people to present this evening. And we have Commissioner Stephen Parrott, the Department of Public Safety, who comes forward. Colonel Clements had contacted me. He's unavailable to be with us tonight, but he had already testified in this topic. So he is excused. I have Carol Wills is with us. And I have Lisa Scorpio has also been invited. What I'd like to do, is Lisa Scorpio here? Yeah. Carol Wills,
Yes.
okay. What I'd like to do is if I can have everyone stand up, please. Just to hold it a second. If you could stand up, please, and I want to swear you in, the 3 of you in, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Please each state your name for the record, please.
Stephen Parry, P-A-R-E.
Carol Wills, K-I-R-A-W-I-L-L-S.
Lisa Scorpio, Lisa Scorpio.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna actually speak with, if you could just hold on 1 second, Ms. Wills, okay? We're gonna ask Commissioner Parry to lead us off this evening. We have a number of questions for you, but I think before we do that, I think it would be prudent if we could probably let a number of items to get into the record so that we can speak freely about them. So I'm going to ask the clerk to distribute packets to my committee as well as council members who are in attendance this evening. And then I'm going to ask my committee if we can enter all of them into the record. You take your time. It's okay, no rush. Anybody else?
Sherry, before you go.
Letters, that's it.
Should I pass it down?
What is, you're doing a good job.
Make sure you take one for yourself. And I'm gonna put a petition. Pass it down. And then you might just-
Anybody on this? Anybody have anything?
Oh, you missed, well, that one goes to the attorney. Solicitor.
Yeah. I have to make sure everyone is strong.
You need more? I have a set. We have, okay, let's just stand at ease until we get the exhibits. Okay, folks, we have registration, Rhode Island registration, IJ866 is Walking Havens Brothers. That's a very important. So your car will be towed, RI registration, IJ866. Anybody here with that plate? Going once, going twice, not here, Joe. Thank you. All right, folks, while we're waiting for those packages of exhibits to be presented to the committee, what I'd like to do is continue item 2, which is the appropriation ordinance. It's the overall budget. There's no changes to that would be impacted this evening. May I have a motion to continue item 2 made by Councilwoman Castillo? Can I have a second? Seconded by Councilman Narducci. Discussion?
Yeah, I was just wondering, are we discussing, I'm sorry, are we discussing or making a recommendation on salary of this position? I'm just confused.
Anything's on the table today. The
Okay.
appropriations would not be changed. The budget dollar is not going to be changed. The only thing that may be changed is the compensation, which is actually item 3 this
Okay,
evening.
great, thank you.
So
For the
item 2,
clarification.
Item 2, I'd like to continue. We have a first by the vice chair. We have a second by Councilman Narducci. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, item 2 is continued. And we are still waiting for exhibits to give to our committee members on Providence Bridge. So I'd like to just stand in these, yes. We've got a big crowd tonight. Who doesn't have a package? Many members? Just you?
I don't need one.
We're gonna get you one.
Thank you.
We don't have one either, but other than good numbers.
We're gonna, okay. I'd like to, let's get a word to Angela that we really critically need one package. You think you have? Just one package. I want to give the commission a package.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, please. Okay. Okay, so Madam Clerk, Does the commissioner have a package of the exhibits that have been handed out to the committee? Okay, so we're gonna go back on into session. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. Everybody's been sworn in?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just wanted to check. Okay, all righty, what I'd like to do now is, now that everybody has their exhibits, I'd like to enter a number of exhibits into the record. And they're going to be attached to the compensation ordinance, which is item 3. So, the first item in your package is a letter dated October 22nd to Commissioner Perry. It's a 2-page document. It's drafted by me on my stationery, requesting a number of documents. Again, it was drafted October 22nd. It references a number of items that were also requested on September 8th by our auditor. And it also reminds the commissioner that the internal auditor is a city chartered established position, and that by virtue of the powers and duties of that office, the auditor is the confidential officer of the city. Furthermore, section 816 of the Providence Home Rule Charter stipulates that the city internal auditor shall have access to the books and records of all offices, departments, and other agencies of the city. It shall be the duty of all officers and employees thereof to supply such information and documents concerning the affairs of the city as the internal auditor may request. That should be 3A, Exhibit 3A. May I have that motion, Vice Chair?
So moved.
Made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. We have Exhibit A is the letter. Okay, Exhibit 3B is a job description for the Community Relations Diversion Services Major. This is on the letterhead of the Providence Police Department, is a job description. The salary on this document, it's a 2-page document. Salary is listed at $113,268, excuse me, $113,268 to $120,189. It expresses the requirements, duties and responsibilities. The requirements expressed are an associate's degree is preferred from an accredited college or university with 10 years plus experience. And that is on Exhibit 3B. Motion made on
So moved.
by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by seconded by Councilman Taylor and Nanducci. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we have B. All right, we have another document in front of us. This is a 2-page document. It is on whose stationery is this? This is the Providence Police Department. We have at the top Jorge Lawson, Stephen Parrott, and Colonel Clements on the top of this stationery. And it appears to be a job description for the Community Relations Diversion Services Administrator. And it expresses duties and responsibilities. There's no requirements expressed in this. So this one is the civilian position job description. May I have a motion to make
So
that
moved.
3C? Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Nanducci. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. We have 3C. So 3C differs from 3B in that 3B was the police major posting. 3C is the job description for the civilian. Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion for a 12-page document that is a article that appeared in Uprise, Rhode Island. Is that the correct name, Uprise? I'm not sure on that, folks.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. published by Steve Alquist, published on October 24. Again, it appears to be a 12-page document entitled Hiring Committee Member Breaks Silence on Michael Stevens as PVD Police Major. Motion to make this item 3D. Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. We have Exhibit D. Okay, now we have a letter drafted to Chairwoman Ryan, members of the Finance Committee, signed by Jim. It appears to be Jim Vincent, President of the NAACP Providence Branch. He has drafted this letter. We're going to call this 3E in support of candidate Michael Stevens. You have it in your package. May I have that motion, 3E?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Madam Chair,
Motion carried. Yes, sir.
can we read these letters into the record, please?
Sure, we can read these things into the record. Let me get my exhibits in first, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item I have is another letter, Exhibit 3F. This is a letter dated November 2nd, 2021. Esteemed members of the Providence City Council Finance Committee. This is from Senator Huntley.
I don't have that one.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, I don't have that one.
you don't have that?
Thank you.
May I have a
Yes.
motion to enter this letter into the record?
So
Let's call
moved.
it 3F. Motion made by Councilwoman Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. At the request of Councilman Coria, may I ask that the clerk read in its entirety letters 3E and 3F, please.
Dear Chairperson Ryan and members of the Finance Committee, as you know, my name is Jim Vincent and I am the president of the NAACP Providence Branch and attended the first meeting of the Black Major discussions in 2015. Unfortunately, due to a meeting conflict, I cannot testify in person. However, this issue is so important that I feel compelled to testify. As a member of the Major Hiring Committee, I can assure you the following. 1, Michael Stevens was never a member of the Hiring Committee. 2, at the Hiring Committee's last meeting, I made 2 motions. The first was that Michael Stevens being included on the list to be given to Mayor Alorza. My feeling was that Mike had a strong interview and had received 4 votes, which is 1 less than the second place tie vote recipients. What's more important to me is that one of the members of the hiring committee could not make Mike's interview. I felt if the member had been able to make it, Mike may have received that member's vote, and Mike would have ended up tied for second at 5 votes. To me, given the importance of the position, the mayor picking from a list of 4 instead of 3 was fair and appropriate. The majority of the committee agreed. My second motion was that although we were told that the major would make this choice after factoring in interviews, the candidates themselves, I felt that the list should be ranked from 1 to 4. The fact that one of the candidates received a unanimous vote, I felt was important. The majority of the committee agreed. This is my testimony. If there's anything else you need, I can be contacted via email or phone number.
Thank you. That's 3E.
The second one is from Senator. Stated November 2nd, 2021. Trustee members of the Providence City Council Finance Committee, dear Finance Committee, in regards to community relations and division services administrative position, I would like to submit this statement for the record. Firstly, I would like to say that I stand on the integrity of the process concerning this position. I was asked to participate in the selection of the major position as a long-standing community member and was very pleased and honored to participate. We're an 8-member committee and interviewed 7 candidates in person at the Public Safety Complex. After the first round of interviews, we voted 4 candidates to be submitted to the mayor for consideration. This concluded our responsibility as a committee. The committee discussed in no particular order or ranking of those 4 candidates submitted to the mayor. There was a discussion regarding the number of names being sent to the mayor, whether it would be 3 or 4, and the committee voted on sending 4 names for consideration by mayor. Beyond this process, I have no personal stake in who the mayor selected as candidates presented different levels of experience and skill sets. It was our understanding that the mayor would interview each candidate and make this decision. I stand on the integrity of the process, and my hope is that the Providence City Council Finance Committee will move to honor the final steps of this process.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to get started by way of background. We're here today, as everybody is likely aware, at least my committee and members of the council. This matter was approved basically, if you have to go back to when the major was approved, is a client. The major was approved, major position was approved by this council, recommended by the finance committee as part of the budget process, approved by the entire city council. So we created a major, another major position in the Providence Police Department on the major salary range. What is the major salary range, Madam Auditor? 116 to 137. 116 to 137. Okay, that is the range of a major's position in the Providence Police Department. That is what is in our budget for a major, and that remains in the budget. This committee made a recommendation when it became apparent the mayor of the city of Providence unilaterally decided to fill the major's position with a civilian. This committee met and we created to accommodate the mayor on a civilian position because as we all voted, it was impossible or not, it did not make any sense to put a civilian in a position of a major in the Providence Police Department. So that's where we got. We went to the committee, the council had a meeting the other evening. It came to the attention, so it passed for the first time. And it passed in a salary range that is a 824 to 827, the civilian position at 99, it begins at 99,517, and it goes to 125,905, which was less than the major's position, but a unilateral move for the candidate that was selected by the mayor. The items came back to this committee because there was questions by council people. We fielded a number of calls and concerns relative to the selection process. So I immediately, the following day, penned a letter to the commissioner asking him for a number to provide a number of documents. At that time, I learned, and that is Exhibit 3A, is part of your package. At that time, I learned that the auditor had already requested documents from the commissioner, and she had not received them. So in my letter, I reaffirmed the request for documents. I expressed the charter requirement to compel you to provide the documents to the auditor. And she is also able to collect confidential documents for review. What I'd like to do now is ask the auditor if she would please opine on what she has received from the commissioner and what she has not received. Again, following the letter 3A, my letter. If you could kindly. What goes in?
I did receive a copy of the original job description that was provided by the Human Resource Director.
So that is Exhibit 3B. Okay, continue.
I also received the education and professional requirements, was the strong leadership and managerial skills, fully aware of community needs, principal and goals, associate's degree preferred from an accredited college or university, and 10+ years of equivalent professional experience. Pay and benefits package. I did receive that, but with the incorrect amount of pay, but he did give me the correct pay. There was no mention of benefits. The job posting dates, yes, I did receive that. And the job posting sites, I did have only the city job page and Brown University listserv. The HR director deferred to the commissioner to see if he had any other posting elsewhere, but I didn't receive any communication from the commissioner on that.
We should go on the,
See,
okay, we're on C now.
I'm sorry,
That's
see.
okay.
Copies of all applications, no, I did not receive one. I was told that I could not have it because of confidentiality issues. So I did not receive anything, and I followed up with the solicitor. And I asked him to opine on that. I asked him that actually in September, when I originally did not get the documents. And he has not yet responded to me. The list of hiring committee, yes, I did receive that. List of hiring committee meetings, attendees, summaries of meetings, agendas, discussions, and action items. I did not receive anything of that. I did receive notice on the committee meetings or the members' meetings, if they did take notes that they have them and that the city did not collect them from the commissioner. List of all applicants interviewed, I did not receive. Dates and times of interviews, I did not receive. And if applicant was ordered an interview, I did not receive. Interviewing and hiring criteria, I was told there was no matrix, but I did receive that data. Interview notes, that was, everyone had kept them in the committee. And the Reagan information, I did not receive. Documentations of recommended candidates, did not receive. Explanation of hiring authority, I did not receive.
Okay. Commissioner, excuse me, just 1 second. Commissioner, when will you make those documents available to the auditor?
Look, giving applications for a process and them potentially becoming public will devastate our ability to recruit at these high levels. And the applicants that had applied with the understanding that their names would be confidential. I know there are people that are employed and that will impact their employment if it were to become public. So I have extreme concern about releasing confidential applicants for a position and hurting those applicants that weren't chosen.
Which is why, excuse me, which is why the auditor of the Providence City Council requested those documents from you. What you provide to her is confidential. Solicitor, can you opine on that? Is that indeed accurate? statement?
Unfortunately, it's not an easy yes or no answer. First of all, the city solicitor is currently working on an opinion, which will be the official opinion of the solicitor. But what you're asking me to opine on, I'd like to see those 2 letters before I go
Okay.
any further with it, because I haven't seen the letters. If I
Well,
can look at the letters, then, you know,
we entered my letter into the record. I believe, is your record, Tyler? We'll make that available to you, and I would like your opinion on that. And if you could please compel the commissioner to provide the auditor with the documentation that the council is requesting, we would greatly appreciate that.
well, I don't have the authority to compel anybody to do anything.
Well,
be
we
honest
would
with you,
like
but-
the solicitor's opinion on a request from the auditor on the documents that are in the body of the letter. Okay,
I will reiterate that to the
Thank
city
you.
solicitor.
thank you very much. Okay, with that, Councilman Taylor, you have a question?
Yes, I have actually a statement
Okay,
that, Madam Chair and my colleagues, we should not expect anything different in this interview that we did with the fire department chief 7 years ago, that we've been trying to get the same information that I brought up. And the commissioner had an interview process, and the same thing happened. We haven't picked anybody. There's nobody qualified, according to the commissioner. Nobody on the Providence Fire Department is qualified to be the fire chief. But we have a fire chief who's Warwick, fire chief who applied for the job, he's the chief of Warwick. We have a fire chief who's in West Warwick, who is the fire chief of West Warwick. We have a fire chief that we have in Central Falls that applied for the job, and he's a fire chief in Central Falls. We have a police chief in Central Falls that is a police chief. They're not qualified in Providence, according to the commissioner and his committee or himself. And I'm just sick of it. I've been saying this for 7 years, that I don't know what we do for an interview process. I would like to see in the future that any interview process that we have, that it go down and we have a city clerk and we have it recorded. Because we never can get an answer from the commissioner from anything. I've been waiting 7 years to get an answer on who's qualified for the Providence Fire Department to be fire chief. I know it's different, but it's not different. It's the same process. There was no, I asked for it, I got redacted names. It was ridiculous, and we still don't have a fire chief. And this process was a sham, in my opinion. And Commissioner, I said it before and I'll say it again, it's time for you to resign.
Okay, I think before we get into any more questions, I would just like to allow the commissioner to explain to this committee what the hiring process was from start to finish. Lay out the timeline for us, explain who was on the committee, explain how it worked. How did we get from the city council approving a major's position in the Providence Police Department to it becoming a civilian position, to now having a lobby, a strong lobby by the mayor and the administration to increase the salary of this position that was created. So please walk us through the whole process, please.
So this position was posted in April. It was funded by this council at a major's position in their salary.
And the salary for that is what the posting in Marie B, document 3B expresses. The major in community relations and diversion services, major in the Providence Police Department, salary at $113,268 to $120,189, and was posted, correct?
That's correct.
When was that posted, sir? April 1st?
April 2nd, I believe.
Okay.
And let me clarify, that was the existing salary for the major. Those increased as a result of the CBA raises. And so the present salary scale is 116 to 137 for a major in the Providence Police Department.
For major.
For a major.
Councilman. Continue, please.
So that job description was created and a posting was placed. There was a hiring committee that was selected from the community. The colonel and I were participants. And for the record, the other members was Mr. Vincent, that you heard from, Wale Akindi was also on the committee, Kara Wills, who is here, Mr. Cedric Huntley, Carla Quello, Reverend Israel Mercedes, Colonel and I. There were 8 members. There was a question about Michael Stevens and his participation. And I'll reiterate, Michael Stevens originally was selected to be on the hiring committee. He did not participate. He attended one Zoom meeting in April and then withdrew, and we had him replaced. Any of the work that was done by this committee was done post Stevens' involvement in any discussions whatsoever. So for anyone to allege that something was given to Mike Stevens as an unfair advantage is an outright lie. Yes, I participated in every single meeting and discussion. And it's not only upsetting to me and the other 7 colleagues that were on this hiring committee, it's an affront to Mike Stevens as well. And
Okay, we want to stick with the process,
Okay.
so let's go back. So you said it was April 2nd. I've got notes here that the application was posted on April 21st to May 31. Is that what you believe to be true?
I'm sorry, That is the correct.
Okay, So-
April 2nd, just for clarification, April 2nd was our first meeting that Stevens participated in. The job posting was April 21,
okay.
and it was taken down May 31.
Was it extended?
It was extended.
Okay, why was it extended?
So originally, it was going to be posted for a period of time, so then we can take the applicants and then process the applicants. There was discussion among committee members and others that let's leave the posting up and we'll just let it roll and we'll continue with our process. I've never had a process where it's an open application, because what happens if you get one late in the process, you'll continue. There's got to be an opening and a closing. But there was originally 3 to 4 weeks is my recollection, where it was posted and then taken down. And we had further discussions and reposted the position until May 31.
All right, so you say that, I don't want to bring the candidate's name into this discussion. I'm trying to do everything I can to avoid Mr. Stevens' name, who is the successful candidate. But you're saying that he was indeed at that first meeting
We had
of a committee that was formed,
we
so
had
he
a,
was on the committee.
he was on the first Zoom meeting.
Okay,
And
why was a committee formed? Was that unusual to fill a major's position? How does a major's position get filled ordinarily within the ranks of the Providence Police Department?
an internal process. Typically, when,
Explain that, I don't know what an internal process is.
so at any promotion
Yep.
within the Providence Police Department, everything's tested except for major, deputy chief, and chief. And so a major is typically a promotion from the ranks of captain. And it's a process internally. Since I've been here, you ask the captains who is interested in becoming major. They apply for it or not. And then there's an interview process by folks. And I've sat on every interview process for the position of major since I've been here. And then a recommendation by the colonel and I to the mayor, and then one is selected.
Okay, all right, so you're stating that Mr. Stevens was on that first committee. Why is it that this committee, why is this position different from any other position? Why is it, was it not internal? And who made the decision to have a hiring committee?
So it's different because it's a community relations and diversion service major that we were forming. It's a newly created position. And so it's not a typical, position that existed and from within the ranks. And so from the beginning, we opened it up to anyone that wanted to apply.
That's not what I understood, but you know what, the goal here was to have you walk us through the process, and I'm trying to pull things out of you, so if you can be a little bit more verbose in your explanation. So it's a community diversion position, you created a committee, a hiring committee, that's unusual. Typically, it's an internal decision.
Well, the distinction is what I thought you were asking. What's the process for a sworn major's position? How does that get promoted? That's what I tried to explain.
Okay,
This was different. We're creating one, the council approved one. And so we then set up a process to find.
after the council committee created the position, a major in the Providence Police Department, who created a committee to select this position?
I did,
You made the decision that you wanted to create a committee.
yes,
You selected the committee?
yes,
So
along
we are-
with feedback.
Okay, so the plan was this committee was going to get together and select who the next major on the Providence Police Department would be.
No, make a recommendation to the mayor, for the
Okay.
mayor to ultimately decide who the next person would be for this position.
Okay. Councilman Nanducci.
Because we keep hearing major, major, major. What we okayed as the finance committee was a major in the police department. The administration, we wouldn't be sitting here if the administration didn't make the screw up by trying to appoint a civilian in a major's position. We're also sitting here going back and forth. Obviously, one of the main reasons why we're even sitting here is because we wouldn't give this particular position, which none of us are saying is not needed in these times. We all agree it's a needed position. The original salary was 113 to 120. We're sitting here because we will not agree with the administration to give this position $137,000. That's why we're sitting here. And the question I have for you, because I might have to leave early, the question I have for you, Commissioner, is how could you, as a person with a police background, even let the mayor tell you that we're going to make this major a civilian? How could you agree to that? What kind of a slap in the face to many of our captains, including captains that have been on that force for a very long time, came up through the ranks, and I'm talking women, I'm talking black, I'm talking Spanish, that came up through the ranks, that got denied a major's position, so a civilian could walk into a major's position. I don't know how you did that. Somebody should be put in jail for doing what you did, because to me, it's totally illegal. The guy on the second floor, this should be a rude awakening. He cannot just do what he feels he wants to do. This is a mayor's position. This is a person that carries a badge, carries a gun. Then to make a statement from you guys, he's going to be a major, but he's not going to be allowed to carry a gun or carry a badge or make arrest powers. That's not a major. And this has nothing to do with the person. This has to do with everything that's going on with the position. With the position. I've talked to 6 captains. So don't say nobody put in. I talked to 6 captains that would have loved to become a major and got denied over this. The major's position should have been full. This position is a separate position that we all agreed on fully. And again, I will not change my train of thought and give somebody $137,000 that's going to make as much as a major in this type of role. Again, it's upsetting that we're sitting here tonight. It's upsetting with the administration, with yourself as an educated person that you are, as a police person that you are. And you can walk into your office, and I don't know how you walk in your office, because there must be a back door so you don't have to face the rest of your police department, to tell them no majors coming out of this department, but a civilian is. Come on, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to respond to
Yeah,
that?
I do,
Please.
because some of the accusations are both offensive and insulting.
It should be.
It is.
Councilman, please.
It is. Nobody can be a civilian and be a sworn major. It's illegal. You have to pass a
I
certified,
know that.
okay. let me
Councilman,
finish.
please. You spoke. Let the
Don't tell me you
commissioner-
already know.
let the commissioner respond.
And so we never intended for it to be a civilian or a sworn. We opened it up right from the beginning. We had civilians applying for the position.
Of a major.
Councilman, please.
For
But he's
this,
not answering my question.
Councilman, please.
for this position, we had civilians applying for the position. And we went through a process. And I'll
Your
continue.
process, you
Right.
created the process,
Like,
correct?
they're gonna create everything they go on to do.
Councilman, please. I'm going to allow the commissioner to speak, please. Commissioner,
Just remind me, Sean.
please,
I don't appreciate that comment.
I don't
please
care. I
continue.
really don't care.
Please continue, Commissioner.
So he created a 6 people from the community to sit and review the applicants as they came in.
For what position? The major's position in the Providence Police Department, correct?
The position that was funded
It was
by the
posted,
council.
funded by the council
Yes.
and advertised, okay?
Yes. I think I named the 8
Yes, you
people
did.
that sat on it. We shared all the applicants with all the committee members. And we had to decide, you want to interview all 43, or how would you like to pare it down? And we had a lot of discussion about, will we here a long time if we interview all 43, or how can we pare it down? And I won't bore you with all the back and forth.
You had 43 applicants
Yes.
that applied for the major's position in the Providence Police Department. Were they all employed by the Providence Police Department?
No,
At what point did the posting change that opened it up to non-sworn officers in the Providence Police
it
Department?
was never restricted. It was opened up for everyone from the beginning. There is this myth of.
See, and that is the issue, sir. That is the issue why the council created a major's position. The
Yeah.
intention was it was a sworn officer. So at what point and who made the decision to change or to redefine the position that was approved by this council to a civilian position? When did that happen? And who made that call?
It happened immediately when we posted the job description and we accepted applicants from candidates in the Providence Police Department, outside the police department, sworn and civilian.
So the job description, if you're saying it happened immediately, I'm struggling with that, sir, because the posting for the major's position specifically says they need to have law enforcement knowledge and
It's not a prerequisite to be a Providence police officer to apply for this position.
well, that was the intention of the council. If
Understood.
that's your understanding of it, then that's a new found statement, because that was not the intention of the council.
Councilwoman,
Okay, that's enough on that, sir. What I'd like to now understand, so you're saying there were 43 positions. At some point, you made a unilateral decision outside of what was approved by the Providence City Council to interview or to allow candidates who were not sworn officers. You made that unilateral decision and you testified to that. What I'd like to know now on the first committee meeting you said was April 21st. You've expressed who the committee members were. How many committee meetings were held after that first committee meeting? How many committee meetings were held?
3.
3 meetings were held, okay. I'd like you to
That I'm
provide.
aware- Oh, I'm sorry, 4.
Yes, I got it. 3 or 4, I didn't hear, you. Was it 3 or 4? There were 4 meetings? Do you have the dates and times of those meetings and who were in attendance?
I don't have, well, June 17th, 18th, 21st, and July 13th. I don't.
Why did you not provide that to the auditor? She asked you that question, I asked her that question. Why is it so hard to get information out of you?
It's not difficult to get information out of it. You wanted applicants, and I strongly believe applicants should not be in the public domain.
Madam Auditor, do you have a comment?
Commissioner, I followed up with an email and I asked you to redact names, date of birth, EEO status. Those are what the HR director said was confidential. I asked you to send them in a redaction. Now, I'm confidential. I wouldn't release the information. That's my job.
I understand.
No, you don't, because you didn't forward them. You didn't even redact the information. That is insulting. I work for the entire city. I'm asked to look at it and do a review and bring it back to this committee. It may have helped in some aspects.
And giving.
It certainly would have informed the process, Commissioner, and that is an issue. All right, so now you're saying there's 4 committees. I'd like you to provide who attended those, who were in attendance. Obviously, you've got the dates on. And what were these meetings on prior to the job description? Who created the job description?
Internally, we did.
Okay, internally, who is internally? Is that the police department? Is that the mayor? Is that the HR? Who created it?
The police department did, I had a hand in it, and HR did as well. City HR.
Okay. All right, was the job description created prior to the committee being formed?
I believe it was.
I believe it was. Was the first meeting about the job description?
It was not.
What was it about?
It was an initial meeting on April 2nd about our goal, our mission.
Okay. You obviously reviewed the candidates. You say there were 43. What was the evaluation criteria? What did you use to determine that they were qualified to serve as a major in the Providence Police Department?
It was up to the committee and their own review, whether or not the candidates were qualified and able to take on this position.
Okay. And there was no matrix, there was no ranking system that the committee utilized?
There was no formal ranking or matrix used now.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for this on this? Yeah, oh yes, Councilman Taylor.
I need to roll the clock back. When you came on as commissioner, were you on the committee to pick a commissioner? Back when Tavares was mayor, Mayor Tavares was the mayor. Were you on the committee to pick a commissioner? Yes or no? Yes or no?
There was no committee. I'm not going to answer yes or no. I'm going to explain there was no committee. So
Did you have a say in who would be the commissioner? Because they were picking a commissioner at the time.
I was appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council.
Right, but who were you suggesting to the mayor, hey, pick this guy, pick that guy, or anything
I
at
don't,
that time?
I don't understand the question.
Well, did you say,
Pick what guy?
you,
The mayor and I.
did you pick yourself to be the commissioner, is my question.
That doesn't make sense. Did I pick myself? I can't appoint myself to the commissioners.
But how did you
The
become
mayor
commissioner?
does.
How did you didn't give him any, because at the time, there was a committee that was looking for the commissioner,
I did not.
and you were on that committee.
I was not on.
Okay, let's move the clock forward, move the clock forward. Deputy commissioner, the current deputy commissioner,
Mhm.
how did that process work? Should be the same interview process, correct?
No, she, the present deputy commissioner,
Who worked for you with the state police, yes.
was the budget person in public safety prior to. I had Mr. O'Toole, who was in that role.
We're kind of
Right,
getting off.
I know I'm getting off, but I'm trying to get to the point of what interview processes does he have? Because he doesn't have any. He picks whatever he's the guy, he's the god, and he says, this is how it's gonna be. And that's wrong, and you've wasted the committee's time, you're wasting our time of doing this because of your insecurities. You've done it for 7 years in the fire department, you got away with it, and it's time to end. And us as a council, we keep letting it go, and we turn around in our head. I've been saying it's time for you to go for years, and you got your 10 years, it's time to go. This is ridiculous, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You have a right to ask the questions that you want answers to. That's
And
why
I can
we're
never
all
get
here.
any, we can never get any from this person.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Fortune has a question, please.
Yeah, so actually a couple in some comments. So I guess for me, I'm a bit confused because what I'm hearing right now is that, so you said earlier that it's illegal for someone to be, who's a civilian, to be a major because you have to be a sworn officer to be a major. So I'm hearing that. Two, I'm also hearing, and I will say, you know, and I'm trying to look at this from a very objective perspective. So I can see how someone can be on a committee, come to the first meeting, step off the committee, and then perhaps apply for the position. But I think the issue that I'm having is that the original position was a major position. And we can always have, there are many municipalities that have a community relations person that serves as the liaison between the police department and the community. That's quite common. In fact, we're seeing a lot of municipalities doing that as we're looking at ways to reimagine policing. The issue that I'm having is that, one, it seems like the job description changed in the middle of the process, which gives people an unfair advantage because there's a lack of consistency, because there was one expectation of what the role should be. And to be frank, if the position was one thing and then it changed to something completely different, then what happens to people outside who could have qualified for that administrative position? They didn't have an opportunity to apply. So it's not an equitable process. It's also not a transparent process when something happens like that in the middle of it. I can see if there was a pause and you guys reconvene and you open the application publicly. And that's, and that happened. The other concern that I have is within the position for the administrator, there's also a component of it where the person is responsible for a diversion aspect. And there's no clear outline of the requirements to have a diversion aspect because that's responding to a nonviolent crisis. And folks who do that type of work are those who are trained, right? And so I think having that training background is critical as well. The other issue is that now we lead into a diversity, equity, and inclusion concern, because then you change your position with the salary that was outlined, and then you change the salary on someone, which is something that happens, unfortunately, to people of marginalized identities, particularly Black and brown people. When you look at statistics, particularly in Providence, they are the lowest paid folks. So overall, the process was not done correctly. It doesn't seem like, without having a rubric, you can't say, well, this was the criteria that we outlined as a committee at the very beginning, and each candidate had a fair advantage because they met, each component of the criteria and they were scored accordingly. And so without having a rubric, there's no way for you to show us or anybody, the public, that any candidate met these particular criteria. So it almost seems like it was an arbitrary process, which is completely unfair. So I'm against changing someone's salary after they're hired because I think that is problematic in terms of a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. Just think about the work that I do. I would advocate against that. But I also am quite concerned with the overall approach of this process. It was not transparent. There's no documentation, it doesn't sound like. People were shut out because the criteria of the job changed in the middle of the process. And then the bigger concern, because I met with you, with the chief, with Jim Vincent in your office, it was 5 years ago, we met the mayor's office. And we talked about having a Black major. And we have, and what I'm saying is that we can still have a Black major and still have, or, major of color, but particularly a Black major, and still have a community relations person. But in terms of process, this whole process has been flawed. And it actually is hurting the person who was given the role, because now there's no way, you don't have any backup. And I've sat on committees in the private sector. I've sat on committees for, on boards for school, in the public sector. And we always have some sort of rubric or criteria that is set out so that if someone questions how we came to the decision, we can back it up. And with everything that's being said, you can't back anything up. So as a public official, I don't know how we can move forward with this if there's no evidence of even the process. It's quite problematic, and it's a disservice to everyone. So how do you, what evidence do you have? What do you have to prove that there was a true and fair process?
Well, I guess, the committee of 8 I was one of 8. And we never created a rubrics. We discussed what we all thought of about each candidate and the qualifications. And so wasn't recorded. There wasn't, a memo on each discussion about who said what, but I can tell you that we discussed and debated on who should move forward for an interview. And should they have prior law enforcement background or not? Should they have supervisory experience or not? Those things were all discussed and voted on by the committee. So when we came to from 43 to 7, this committee voted on those 7 to move forward, understanding we could go through and interview all 43. The committee, not I, not the colonel, it was the committee that decided how to pare it down. Now, were they all in 100% agreement with those 7? No, like anything else, there were different opinions. And so it came down to a vote, and the majority of the members proceeded with 7 to be interviewed.
Okay, just please hold. Are you all set, Councilman?
Can I just say?
Please,
one thing?
please
Thank you.
continue.
And the other thing too, because it seems like this new description was rushed, when you read it, and you read the duties and responsibilities, I wouldn't necessarily put it in a category as an administrator. There's a lot of flaws here. And as much as I would like to see someone in a role as an administrator and to have fair and equitable pay, because that is important. But because of the leaders, right, public safety, the administrators, not creating a rubric or a process, you actually hurt the person and everyone else who could have potentially applied for this position. So I think this was a rush job, and I do think that you all have to come up with some sort of like outline of the process or approach without disclosing people's information, because I think we do have to protect people's privacy in a hiring process. But there has to be something that is outlined that we can show the public and how you came to how you came to the selection.
Thank you, Councilwoman. It is a matter of fairness, and without evidence of any meetings, you talk about creating a committee. You went from the council creating a major's position to this committee creating a civilian, trying to put a civilian in a sworn police position. So there's a lot of missteps along the whole way. We have actually committee members with us this evening. You were on the committee, you stated that, but we have Wally, is it Wally? Okay, Kimby was on the committee, as you had stated. He is in the audience today, and I'd like to invite him as well as the other 2 ladies. Just 1 second, please, Councilman, please. I'd like to invite you up, and that's fine, but I want to invite them to the table, please. Lisa Scorpio, and we also have Carol Wills. Okay. So everybody's been sworn in except for Wally. I'd like to get Wally sworn in, please.
Please raise your right hand. You swear the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Thank you very much. Councilman, I wasn't ignoring you. Please, you have questions?
I got 2 questions for the commissioner.
Perfect. Go right ahead.
Because again, you're starting to see more and more that this was a created position for an individual. 43 people were interviewed for a major's position.
7 were interviewed.
What was the 43 number that you used? 43 applicants. Okay. Those 43 applicants, were they police officers?
Not all of them.
Not all.
No.
Right, so I'm still, I guess I'm still trying to figure out how a major's position, we interviewed people that were not police officers for a major's position. That's where I think, maybe it's just what I'm looking at. We okayed a major's position in the budget. We still are going through all of this, and you guys have still not hired a major that we okayed in the budget. The word major should be taken right out of this new position. You keep using the word major in this position. Community relations, whatever we want to go forward and call it. Yeah, it kind of upsets me because I don't know about you guys, but even in my little league, my football organization, as city council committee members, committee meetings, city council meetings, do you know what would happen to us if we didn't have minutes to our meetings? How do you people have no minutes to meetings on such an important matter to the city of Providence? How?
We never took minutes to the meeting.
That's not my question.
Let me explain. I sat on the selection with the community for this police chief. And we didn't take minutes, didn't record the process, and went through a very similar process. So I guess your interest in documenting what was said and who was said it by this hiring committee. This is a volunteer hiring committee that came forth and agreed to sit on betting on 43 applicants to refer forward to the mayor.
And I understand and respect that.
Okay.
But what I still don't get is, again, this is an important position to the city,
It is very.
right, to all of us. I mean, especially the ones that live in the city. How there was no minutes taken or not having I'll use the words we use in the Little League, a recording secretary to take notes of these meetings going on. I don't know how that wasn't done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Okay, so we tried to get you to walk us through the process that you used. It was a little bumpy, and I still have a lot of questions. What I'd like to do now, I've invited up two members of the committee that met, and I'd like to hear from you what happened. I'd like to ask if you could be kind enough to walk us through the process that you went through. From the beginning. Did you have a job description? What did it look like? Who was in the meetings? And what was the discussions that were not documented? Or maybe they were documented. What was your experience, please? Anyone who wants to speak?
I'll defer to Carol from security go first.
Okay, first, Carol Wills, you were on the selection committee.
Yes,
Were you at every meeting?
yes.
Okay, please continue.
So there is a little bit of a backstory that has not been mentioned.
Go right ahead.
Part of it does begin in 2015.
We'll go back to 2015. That's okay. We have plenty of time.
With the Black Major movement, looking at the statistics of the rank and file of the existing Providence Police Department for the advancement of officers from the rank of sergeant forward. The structure that is currently present within the police department is such that the exams have been a problematic issue. This is not something new to people within the police department. This is not something new to people outside of the police department. The contention with that has been to be able to change the exams, to change the promotional process. Recently, recently being this year, we were told that process was going to be started underway. It has not as of yet. Previously, it was a problem upheld by the union. And the problem itself would be the weight of the exam towards being able to meet promotion after taking the exam based on timing to study for it, prepare and answer all of the questions and move forward. That is why the numbers have been so low. In reference to the numbers being low, the command staff prior to this position being posted consisted of all white males with the exception of one Latino. And it had been that way for a very long time, a very, very long time. It should also be noted, because this is extremely important, during this process, 2 majors of the command staff had put in their papers for retirement. This will later become very important in the process. Those 2 positions, one was for the uniform division, and the other was for administrative with having to do with promotions and exams. Both also had some fiscal fiduciary responsibilities. During the conversations in discussing how those positions would be maintained, but have duties separated from them to be a part of the new major's position, there was a discussion that was included with members that were part of the Black Major movement, the mayor, and the commissioner. We have always known that it was not possible for the mayor or the commissioner to place a person based on their color. This was not something that we were expecting them to do to affront the law and cause themselves to have other liabilities as a result of that. The intention was to notice the disparities, the consistency, the longevity of the disparities, the graveness of those disparities. What has consistently been told to us was that, but every year every year we receive more applicants of color. What is not being noted is the attrition of those applicants that complete the academy, but within less than 3 years, some more, leave the police department. So now the numbers that you had that were higher are suddenly evaporated. So you're filling and filling and filling, and the tide keeps coming in. That's a problem. This was a problem in reference to officers of color and with women. Now let's add the exam as part of another problem. And then separately, chief's points, let's add this on how that happens. The last major that was a person of color was under an extreme circumstance. The person was very qualified to become that major, but extenuating circumstances caused that to be impacted greatly as to what could be done under that person's supervision. Community initiatives were started. Community policing was something that was heavily increased and was going very, very well, but due to an unexpected death and illness, that did not continue with this person in that particular position. In no way should that person's character be impugned for what happened based on the circumstances that followed. When we then talked about the committee, what was going to happen and how that was going to be done.
The hiring committee.
The hiring committee. It was actually called an interview committee. It wasn't called a hiring committee. It was called an interview committee. So I can see how there's some hair splitting over a committee to form a committee. There was no committee to form a committee. It was just a committee. The mayor had suggested that he wanted to have people appointed to it. We had requested that at least one of those positions be someone who was from the Black Major movement. That ended up being me. And then the commissioner was going to contact some people in reference to being on the committee. At another point, we met with the mayor again, and I said, we do have some members that are there, but I feel that the voice of the youth is not necessarily represented. It was explained that there was a representative who had a department that worked with youth, but the response was that person wasn't working directly with the youth because the administrative position meant that there wasn't day-to-day involvement. So I had suggested that Wale be added to the committee. That was agreed upon. Wale was added to the committee. In his professional capacity, working with youth is a daily part of the job. So the representatives that were on the community interview committee all represented different facets of the community, some well-established, some not, police and ourselves. The person that had initially been said wasn't on the committee, was on the committee, had forwarded an email that they were available, would participate. That when we had the commissioners correct on April 2nd, this is my recollection, we did have the first Zoom meeting.
April 2nd.
April 2nd. It was the Friday before Easter, so it's a little easy to remember. We did have that Zoom. On that particular Zoom call, we had discussed that the job description was not fully fleshed out at this point. We were asked to develop questions to be prepared to ask.
Who led the meeting?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Who led the meeting?
The commissioner led the meeting. The commissioner led the meeting. We were asked to come up with questions that we would be asking potential candidates, that we were to have another meeting to discuss how we would go through the applicants, what would happen about that, and other things that might need to be done for a formalization of how this was to go.
Did you provide questions to the?
Not during that meeting, but we did provide questions.
Subsequently, there was a body of work
Yes.
that was presented to the commissioner. Commissioner, could you make that package available to the auditor, please, for our review?
The 8 questions that were developed by the committee.
Whatever questions that were developed by the committee at your request at that first meeting, we'd like to look at that, please.
So what he's answering is the first meeting, there were no questions from that. The other questions later on were developed. But during that meeting, people gave their opinions about what they thought about this position existing. Most of us understood that this was going to be a position that we thought was necessary, that the city did need, given we wanted to be, even though we're behind the curve, we wanted to try and be ahead of what had happened racially, socially, within different cities and towns, and have duties that would be reflective of interacting with the community, interacting with the rank and file, as well as interacting with the training academy. Because one of the duties that was supposed to be in this was also the training academy.
And at that first meeting, was it your understanding that you were filling a major's position in the Providence Police Department?
We did know we were filling a position as a major, but what we didn't know at that point was that we didn't have an understanding that we weren't going to consider other people, but we 100% knew it was a major position. But we didn't know that lay people were not going to be able to apply.
I agree.
We knew that it was going to be a major position, but we thought it was open to everyone.
You knew it was going to be a major's position in the Providence Police Department, and it was your understanding, was that expressed by the commissioner, that it would be open to everyone?
It was expressed by the mayor.
But I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
It was expressed by the mayor
When
prior to the meeting.
When did the mayor tell you that?
Oh, several conversations, in December, in January, in very early March, that he wanted to open it up to multiple levels of people to be able to have a wide range of candidates.
Madam Auditor, when did the council approve that budget? Was that before, or did you say you had those discussions then?
We had discussions in December in reference to, yes.
But not for an outside person, for a police officer.
The Black Major Movement had discussions about promoting a police officer from within. But we had discussions relative to where would the applicants be coming from because of the postings. That was open to people that were beyond law enforcement.
So I have something to say to that.
Please.
As a Black Major Movement member, it was a police officer and there was the original posting. And we wanted a major. We didn't ask for the community diversions, like they're trying to make it off like, oh, well, that wasn't it. It was a major. Then they brought us the community diversions, whatever it is, the job posting, and everything on it, it was for a police officer.
Okay.
And then, and they asked us to approve it, we discussed it, the Black Major Movement was very much involved in every step of this process. And I wasn't gonna use the word liar, but since someone else did, there's lots of lies being said here. Everything started in November. When we got the second job description, we were all shocked because we saw bachelor's degree was taken off, policing was taken off, all these things, and we questioned them, we had pushback, because we said over and over and over again, this is for a Providence police officer, an active Black sergeant. That
And
was
those, if
agreed
I don't
upon.
mean to interrupt you, but those discussions happened with the mayor when, in November?
Those discussions didn't happen in November. They happened in, listen, to the mayor and to the commissioner's chagrin, we have almost all of those meetings taped, and we have meeting notes too. So we can see where the lies are coming from.
Can you provide those to the committee? Can you provide them to the auditor, please? Okay, I'm trying to get a timeline because the council passed the budget that carries the major or that contains the mayor's position in it, hold please, on March 21st. So I'm trying to discern if there were discussions prior to that regarding whether it was going to be a major in the Providence Police Department or civilian.
So on January 1st, we had a meeting and it was discussed that it was still a new major. On March 1st, we had a meeting and it was discussed that it was still a major, and that was the inception of contemplating putting together an interview committee. On March 4th, I was contacted about being on the interview committee. On March 22nd, we were still talking about it as a major. The description was shared with us, the new major position description was shared with us on April 13th of this year.
So as of April, it was a police officer, because the very first job description was for a police officer.
And that is the posting that is a part of this package, is that correct?
Do you have the very first posting?
Yes.
Yes. And you'll see it says policing trends, knowledge of policing trends. You have to be over the training academy. You have to do all these things that are
That is
non-police
free.
officers never done.
Yes, yes, that's the posting.
Okay, that is the posting 3B. Okay, please continue.
So at that point,
I like this timeline. I'm finding it very, very helpful, so please continue.
so I'm going to go back to April 2nd because something very instrumental happened on the phone call on April 2nd. As we're talking about it, several of us are expressing our appreciation and understanding that there would be someone that would be community relations and diversion. It should also be noted that at the exact same time of talking about having that on the new major position, there was a person within the police department who was doing community relations and had a small staff underneath them. So part of the job description hadn't been fully fleshed out, April 2nd, hadn't been fully fleshed out. When we get to the actual Zoom call, one person stated that they thought that the police were doing a great job. They needed to make sure that they were making it clear that the Providence Police Department was doing a great job and that they didn't need any more positions. And that a new major position wasn't necessary.
The person who wasn't on the committee.
Yes, this is the person who later left the committee. That stated that during the call.
And became
I'm
an
sorry.
applicant, and became an applicant.
Yes,
All right,
correct.
all right, I'm a little confused, okay.
I got a little confused on that. So is that the person that ultimately was offered the position?
Yes.
Correct, that's what we're saying.
Okay,
Yes. On April the 22nd, we got a list, I should also note, on April 13th, the job description was shared with us. And when it was sent, it didn't have committee members' names on it. It was blank hard
line
copy.
CC, yeah.
So on April the 23rd, I had sent an email specifically asking, because we started to get applications. And I specifically asked, this person's not on the committee. I see this list. Is this person applying for the position? And it was very clearly stated on April 23rd that the members of the committee no longer included that person's name. One person had been added at that point, which was the Reverend Israel Mercedes. He was added. So prior to that, we had not had a person from the faith community on the interview, right? But that was the person who was now there.
So Mr. Stevens was on the committee, as far as you understood, all the way through when, what date?
The 23rd, 22nd, 23rd
Of April.
Of April.
from March,
From March through April.
yes.
Okay. Councilman Taylor, you have a
Did
question?
you at any time before May 12th receive a list of the applicants that they put in? Did you have a number of 42? Where did 42 come from, then went to 43? Or you just got one application that was 43? I mean, not one.
They
not one
literally
application, one
came in
list.
dribs and drabs. So
So
some.
each time you had a meeting, you said we had 12 people, next meeting we had 20 people. How did that work?
We received the list of the 43 applicants, the names first, and then we started to receive the applications after that.
Okay, but I mean, where did it change where, because reading this uprise thing, it looked like they went from 42 to 43.
It was always 43. It was never
always
42.
Okay, okay, thank you.
That's a typo. It was always 43.
Okay.
Could I mention something that you asked the commissioner if this is how majors are always put into place?
I did.
I would ask him, now, 2 majors were put into place. One was a white police officer, one was a Latino. The Latino officer was interviewed part of this committee. I would like to see the meeting notes and the interview dates of when that white officer that became a major was interviewed, was vetted, and went through everything that we had to, because we had to go through 8 months of meeting with the commissioner and the mayor as they lied to our face every single time. Because where are the meeting notes for the white man who just became a major? Where I want to see where there was interviews, like we had interviews.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner, would you like to answer that question? Do you have committee notes for other hirings of major positions?
So I explained how we did it in the past and how we filled these 2 majors. We interviewed, the colonel was on the interview, myself, and the other 2 majors, the existing majors. And we did interviews with the candidates that were seeking the position of major. We did not do rubrics, we did not do I don't think we even formalized questions like we have here, but we posed questions to every candidate, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there were 5, because Stephanie was on it as well. We discussed each candidate and we opined about their ability to take on the position of major.
Madam Chairwoman, those
Let's
2
please
majors,
continue. Okay.
those 2 majors filled the vacancies of the 2 that retired just as the end of the interview process was happening.
2 weeks.
They had both. In application for positions, there were names of officers that were existing officers, as well as people who were not officers.
So I'd like you to please continue. You are on the timeline. We appreciate that. I'd like to hear more about how the list of 43 applicants were received. Who received them? Did you vet them? How did you vet them? Was there a rubric that qualifications that you measured them against? Those kinds of questions. Can you please share your thoughts with the committee on those things?
So we
As well as how you got to the finalists.
So we received emails that would tell us the names of applicants. And initially, it would be that there were emails that would say, this is from a batch. It didn't literally say the words, this is from a batch. We just got batches. And then we would receive the resumes of those applicants, and they would be from different dates that people had gone to the posting and entered things on the system and then sent out. That happened on several occasions. There was a moment where some applications, it seemed to be like a stoppage of applications, which was questioned. Why is there a stoppage of applications? What happened?
When did that seem to stop?
That was It was, I made a note about it on May 21st. And it was discovered that the posting dates had been requested to stop early. The director of HR had responded because the integrity of asking about that was something that was posed, like what happened. The commissioner had stated, I've given everything that I have. That was absolutely true. Everything that was received had been forwarded. There was a glitch within the system because the posting had been requested to be stopped earlier than the date it was supposed to. That was what the director of HR found. When he found the missing applications, those were forwarded to us. And the posting was also still remaining open so that people could see it. And this was confirmed in an email from the Director of Human Resources on May 21st. On June the 8th, we received, we being the interview committee, received an email informing us that the list would be called down, the list of applicants would be called down to 8 to 10 people. It was to be based on our input.
Who did you get that email from?
The commission. It was to be based on our input, so that it would be manageable and that we could begin to set interviews. Also at this point, we have been asked by the commissioner that we all hit reply all, because we're not meeting in person. We're meeting over, we're not meeting, we're exchanging emails back and forth. And he was very consistent in making sure to state, please reply all in your responses. There's not that many of us on it. Because at this point,
Were there blind CCs or were there names on?
no, names are on it. Names are on the emails at this point.
Councilman Taylor has a question.
Was the mayor on this email?
No,
None of them.
Who's
no,
on the email?
it's the committee members and the commissioner's assistant, Margaret Patel, and the chief.
So just for the edification of this committee, it was James Vincent, Wally Akinbi, Kara Wills, Cedric Huntley, Kara Kula, Colonel Clements, Reverend Israel Mercedes, and the commissioner.
The chief and Margaret Patel.
Okay, for all of these emails.
Yes,
Yes.
When did Mr. Stevens drop off your emails?
that was the 22nd, back on the 22nd of April.
April.
22nd of April. Yep, we have that. Yep, thank you.
And the minister only showed up at one meeting.
Please continue.
So we were at June the 8th, yes, that we would call the list down. We did have interviews, well, we were supposed to hit reply all to send the information of our selection of candidates that we wanted to move forward. At this point, just so that everyone knows this, we were asked out of the full list that we had to forward people. So there were people who were not police officers that were in consideration. Their qualifications were a PhD degree that had to do with conflict resolution, working in education, doing teachings and reflections with police departments. That seemed to be commensurate with what the description itself had. A PhD is something that is not easily attainable, and the years that these people have been working in institutions with other people for conflict resolution, diversion, community relations, that seemed that they would be reasonable. We have individually, there were only 3 of us who used reply all to forward our suggestions as to who should be interviewed. Yes.
Well,
Sorry.
I can go to the chair. I'd like to answer that.
Councilman Taylor, please.
Why was there only 3?
I have no idea why.
Was it told there was only gonna be 3 people, or how did you?
No, when I say there were 3 people that were hitting reply all, it's
Right.
out of the entire interview committee, only 3 people were hitting reply all.
Okay. And
So
those,
other people were responding, but not including the
but
rest of us.
not including you guys. So you didn't get an email from the other 5 people.
Exactly,
You got 3 within each other.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And was there any, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, was there any, like say if you pick 7, where, I don't know, did you pick 7 or pick 8? How many did you pick?
Well, see, at this point, we weren't done receiving applications,
Mhm.
so I think
So how
I
do you-
picked 5.
So you picked 5?
I think I picked 5 at that
Okay.
point, and then when we got the rest of the other applications,
Yeah.
I changed my list.
Out of 5, you picked.
So there wasn't like a deadline to say, listen, this is by, because we're up to June 8th now. June 8th, we're gonna stop it and we're gonna send over the, what we want, who's
So
your recommendations?
we had a simultaneous mailing that, one of the days, we got like 3 emails in one day that told us that the interviews were going to be starting. And I thought, well, how are the interviews starting when we still I didn't get to answer who I thought was going to be picked for.
Well, you weren't on the other 5 list, you were on the 3 list.
Right, I was on the 3 list, and I didn't understand that, so I myself, on the 16th, sent an email.
June 16th, right?
June 16th, to Raphael in the mayor's office, questioning the transparency of the reply alls.
Okay.
I have included the commissioner and the chief on that, asked that it be provided to the mayor, because I felt that that was not uniform. And I felt that if we were doing this in a room, in person, we would all be able to hear and see who everyone was talking about. I didn't receive a reply from anyone that I sent that to, no one.
Now on the.
Excuse me, may I just jump in? Commissioner, can we get a copy? Can you please send to the auditor a copy of the emails? If you want to eliminate any names of candidates, I'm fine with that, but I'd like to see the emails exchanges during the entire process. I think the auditor would like to look at that with all of the people's names on those emails. Who received them, who was sending them. Please continue, Ms. Wilson. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped.
Yes,
ahead.
that's okay. So I probably jumped ahead again, but how many names were you, it was 7 or 8 to 10? Like at the end, how many, no, it was 43 candidates.
Mhm.
And you wanted 10 to go in front of you and interview, or 7 or 8, or what was the exact number?
So we submitted our list together. Like, so Kira and I, we all had to screen all of the resumes individually.
Yeah.
After reading them and going through all the candidates ourselves, members of the Black Major Movement and Karen and myself, we submitted our names together. So we submitted a list of female police officers, several members of the Providence Police Department that are still active, and that was the list that we sent, including one other person who was former Providence police officer. We submitted our list, and then we received the candidate list selected by the commissioner.
Okay, so on that, that's where I'm going. On the 10 names, I don't know, would you think you could send 8 in, 10? I'm trying to be fair.
It wasn't even that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you sent 5 in,
Yeah,
were your 5 names that you picked on that list that came up?
a couple.
What's
A
that?
couple. Two.
A couple, but
I think
the others
two.
weren't.
I think 2.
Yeah.
2 of them were part of the.
But you don't know what the other list was because you never got it, it was only between you 3.
Yeah,
So you never saw the list with the other 5
no,
until I actually come up and said, this is what we're doing.
correct.
So the other 3 names that you guys picked, let's say, were not even thought about because they weren't on your list. They weren't on the final list.
To our knowledge, yeah.
Well, before I go any further, I want to say, I thank you for being on the committee. I thank you for coming here tonight, and I apologize on the city of Providence side that I feel that I said it before, I feel we wasted your time by this process because it wasn't done right. And I wholeheartedly apologize for that because I know the commissioner won't. But I do really appreciate that you've come here. And you are, I mean, all the time, because I've been saying this about the fire department beating the drum. There is no interview process. So I just really appreciate you guys coming here tonight and telling us your story and putting the truth out there because we would have not heard the truth. And I appreciate that.
So I think it's also important in the major appointment, we knew in advance that traditionally that was done inside of the police department, and that the only other way that it was done was through a mayoral appointment. So what was surprising was that the training academy started prior to interviews, and people were hired to work at the training academy prior to interviews. So it meant whoever this person was that was going to be receiving this position is inheriting people that they did not get to select, and that the training academy did not have the benefit of their conversation and input prior to it beginning. The other thing that I was very concerned with, and I think you were there, of course you were there, when I said it was, it seemed unfair that this new major would not have direct access to the two former majors because they had retired before this person was hired. So any institutional knowledge that was going to be relayed was going to be on paper or electronically, because you don't have the benefit of having an actual conversation, be it by telephone, in person, Zoom, or otherwise, to answer questions or to fill in information. And that to me seemed very odd, given the level of duties that this person was going to have to undertake. The response to that was that this isn't the first time that we've done this. We've done this before and we do know how to do it. And I understand this is something that the police department themselves have done before, but there have never been, I'm here 53. Now the world is gonna know my age over. 53 this month later, but not, that it hasn't been done where 3 majors were appointed within 1 month for a command staff that of the size that it is for this city. That is very unusual, and to not have that person be able to have direct contact, no matter what ethnicity, what representation they have, is difficult, because that's a large responsibility.
Thank you. Councilman Taylor. you
Just
have
one
a-
quick follow-up, I don't know, to Lisa. You said that they hired a Latino and a white major. The Latino major that they hired, was he on your original list?
No, he was not on our list, and he interviewed for the job and got the job. But the white officer didn't interview and he got a job. But the funny thing is, those 2 officers were placed in a major position within 2 weeks. Why do Black people have to jump through hoops? Whenever there's a job, and I said this to the commissioner, whenever there's a job in an administrative position and a Black person wants it, they have to jump through hoops, because I guarantee you, if we look back on the history of Providence Police, never has a major, a deputy, anyone had to go through what this major has had to go through. And what do you think? The morale of Providence police officers that know. What I wanted to say to you, Councilman Taylor, is thank you so much. How novel it is. You started off this meeting with Para, who had a unanimous candidate, and you allowed that hiring committee to hire the unanimous candidate. You didn't say who's number 2, who's number 3, who's number 4. That's what we did. That's what you did. We met with him for 8 months. He knew it.
Just to add to what Lisa said, so skipping past to the interviewing process, we interviewed 7 candidates. The initial ranking system that we did on the last day of interviews, where we were asked by the commissioner, and it was a unanimous decision among all the committee members to pick 3 candidates, the top 3. This is the last time we met in person before we revisited and added the 4th candidate. We were asked to pick 3 people, and we picked, and I'm gonna say the names.
No, don't say the names.
Well, okay, cool. So the first person was, he's an active sergeant in the police department. The second candidate that received votes later became major, and the third person was a former officer of the police department that currently works at Brown University.
The second and the third were tied.
Yes,
They got tied votes.
They got tied votes, so it was like 4 votes to 5 votes apiece.
5
5 votes apiece. The first candidate that we picked, the person that ranked number 1 had unanimous votes from everyone on the committee.
Everyone.
That's including the commissioner, that's including the chief, that's including Jim Vincent, Mr. Cedric, myself, and Kara, and
Sorry, there's a fly.
and so that happened in person. That was the last time we had a discussion about the candidates in person. Fast forward to a week. We received an email from the commissioner asking us.
What was the date of that?
What was the date that the commissioner emailed us to have another Zoom call to add on the fourth candidate? It was in July.
July 13th.
It was, yes, July 13th. Yeah, we received an email, requesting all of the committee members to come back onto a Zoom call to add a fourth candidate. And the fourth candidate was the person that ended up receiving the position. Now, when we got into that Zoom meeting, I found it very strange that the commissioner was advocating for this person to be added. Because when the first couple of times we had the discussion, it was, we're gonna pick 3. Initially, we were gonna send their names to the mayor, no ranking was required, and that's what was told to us.
Is there any documentation of those 3 candidates being presented as finalists?
We have the list written down, and I can get.
Was it transferred electronically?
Yes,
No, we did votes in person, and then we had, well, we took our own.
we took our own
tabs.
personal notes. We took our own personal notes with the ranking of all the candidates.
Okay, so on July 13th, there was a 4th candidate that was introduced by the commissioner.
The 4th candidate wasn't introduced, it was to add the 4th candidate to move forward to the mayor. The person had already been interviewed. But it should also be noted that one of the people that got the position right now as a major also had been interviewed.
Yes.
And if we discussed that the 2 vacant positions, there was a question among the committee members about, there are people who have already done some of these responsibilities, why could they not have this position?
Mhm.
And my response was that there are 2 vacant positions for majors right now, so they could have either one of those positions. And the response from the police were that we don't have to talk about that right now, we're here for this major. Yet one person was actually moved over to that person that we interviewed. The other person, we did not give an interview, but that person had applied. So that was 2 people that could have just taken themselves right out.
Councilman Nanducci has a question.
So during all this process, you guys were still under this understanding that you were hiring a police major.
Yes, sir.
Never a civilian, whatever they want to call the position. And people out there that think this is a waste of everybody's time of what we're doing here, they should be the ones ashamed of themselves, because we still do not have a police major. None of us are here arguing the point of this other position. The process, yeah, we're arguing the process, we're not arguing the position.
Mhm.
You know,
Correct.
I mean.
I agree with you. It's also.
If everybody was treated fair and equally, none of us would be here right now arguing the point, period.
That's true, very true.
And like I said earlier, for the administration to think that they were gonna come to us as the city council and we were gonna pass a civilian in a major's position. I mean, I don't think what the mayor thought where our common sense was, or if he was dealing with a bunch of fools just to get over on us and get this position past us. I want to do like Chief Taylor and the chairman. I really want to thank you guys for your patience and what you have done to hang in there and to still be here tonight fighting the hiring of a major.
For what's right.
Right, for what's right.
The major position is still very necessary.
Of course it is.
It's still funded.
It's still funded. We funded it.
So may I ask the question?
Yes, please.
Why is it not being considered that the major position as it was established is still fulfilled? And the other major position becomes under the Community Relations Department, which currently exists, does not have a overarching leadership, and expand that department because it's very, very underutilized at this point. It could be expanded to a much greater level.
Madam Warner, you have some information, don't you, on that
Yes.
diversion
There's
operation?
a community engagement specialist. Did you review that job description? Did you see the criteria
that person has to have a bachelor's degree. They have to have, in a specific field, and, you know, very specific field, and 2 years experience. The major, as they posted it, only required preferred associates, preferred. So the person who would be working for the administrator actually has higher credentials than that major.
But the person who was in the position of community relations does have a bachelor's degree. I believe that person has a master's degree also.
Are you speaking of former Captain Remolina?
Yes.
Okay, yes, and he was promoted to major, so.
But was his position in the very specific field that you said was necessary for community relations? Because that's what I'm missing.
No, this is a civilian position, the community engagement
Oh,
specialist.
he's
It is a civilian, in addition, I think. Because the first job posting had a bachelor's.
Oh, so
And
you're
then they
saying-
dumbed it down. The second job posting is dumbed down. And let me say, on October 8th, the Black Major Movement met with the mayor. And the mayor said he was not gonna put a black major in place because he did 25 years ago and it didn't work. So all black police officers have to stand back now because the mayor said Cornell Young didn't do a good job, so why should he do that again?
Okay.
When he
folks.
came to you for that.
Okay, folks, can I just say, it's getting late in the hour, just hold, please, just 1 second. It's getting very late. I do want to agree with my council colleagues that I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done, for coming forward tonight. This is important, this is an important job. It's something that the council believes very strongly in. We're supporting of the para. I too, Ms. Scorpio, was very impressed with the process that para committee went through in hiring an executive director. And they, he presented himself tonight. We were pleased with the process. There's so many questions that we have about the process that was employed and led by the commissioner. I have no number of questions. It's getting very late. I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my quorum.
May I ask one more thing?
Hold on, please. Councilman Taylor.
I just have
Very quickly,
two last
and then we'll-
questions. One is, so the top three were African American, Latino, and African American, and it was three. My last question is gonna be for the commissioner. At any point in time during this process, were you told X, Y, and Z is gonna get this position? Remember, no.
Absolutely not.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay,
Can I make one more?
please, everybody, I'm gonna accept the motion. It's getting very late. We've got a number of documents that we've requested from the commissioner. I'm gonna ask kindly that you honor the office of the auditor. She works very, very hard. She maintains confidentiality if that's a concern. It is no one's desire to expose any confidential information. However, it is the council's desire to make sure that we appropriately vet this important position. Ms. Wills, I will allow you to have one more comment you'd like to make.
Thank you. I think it is extremely important to note that part of the reason that the person who got the unanimous vote received that was because out of all of the candidates, it wasn't just the number of years of experience. This person had specifically researched information regarding budgets and how to support different things that would be inclusive of external and internal supports. No other candidate had a response that included any of that, along with the number of years in the various levels and departments within the police department to exemplify that they would be able to have cohesion and buy-in. So that is why that person got a one vote, to the degree that the HR director also believed that that candidate was, of the ones that were there that day, the best candidate.
Okay, I'm on this forum, so I need to take a vote here, folks. What is the desire of this committee?
I make a motion to continue this matter.
Second.
Would that motion be to continue item 3 and 4?
Yes.
Motion made by Councilwoman Narducci, seconded by Councilman Taylor, all in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you
Seeing
again
there's
for
no
coming.
further business before this honorable body, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Move have a motion to adjourn made by Council Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Council Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, we are adjourned.